back for this installment of my podcast series, Southern Cross Shakespeare. In this episode, I will be discussing King Lear, the text I studied and analysed during my summer course at RADA way back in 2002. King Lear is a terrific play that explores the bonds and betrayals between families. I came across this play thanks to my teacher during my 4 weeks at RADA, John Adams. You see, before we even had to begin our time at RADA, they told us we had to memorise a monologue from Shakespeare's works. At the time, I had no connection to any of Shakespeare's works except studying 2 of his plays during my final exams at high school. I was so disconnected from him at that stage of my life, I can't even remember what the texts were, because I honestly don't remember. I did not have much time to learn the text that I was going to learn, as we were only told 2 weeks before we began that I had to learn it, and I was still halfway around the world in Australia. After scouring his work for 5 seconds, I just decided to learn Shakespeare's most famous monologue by heart, To Be or Not to Be, by Hamlet in Hamlet. I did not know there was so much involved in learning Shakespeare and in learning this particular monologue off by heart. I'm glad I did it though, as most people outside of the theatre don't even know the words to this entire monologue off by heart, except for the first line, of course. And even when they say this first line, they have no idea what its true meaning is. Hell, I didn't know what any of it meant at the time I was learning it. I thought I did, but as John Adams would tell me when I performed it for him, I didn't have any clue as to what it meant. So when the time came, John sat down with all of my fellow classmates and had a brief discussion with us, and then invited us to perform our monologues to him in private, one by one, so that we would not have to feel intimidated. When I performed To Be or Not to Be to him, with great gusto and emotion, he asked me what I thought about the monologue and what it was all about. I can't tell you what I said to him verbatim because I honestly don't remember. I do remember vaguely that I crapped on to him for at least 2 or 3 minutes about how it was an analysis of our society and our subconscious feelings of pain, anguish, and destruction due to our deep-seated regrets and anger towards ourselves and our parents and society as a whole. I'm making this up for all of you, I know, but you get the drift I'm trying to get at, right? I was trying to sound intellectual, and while I am that at times, people who know me will tell you that I am anything but. They often say I call a spade a fucking shovel. John sat there patiently until I was finished and bluntly said I was wrong. Remember in my first episode how I told you John opened up Shakespeare for me? That I wouldn't tell any of you how, because everyone must come to this discovery on their own? Well, I'm going to tell you now what he said to me in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of how this can work. If you have a teacher that understands you and can open up Shakespeare to you in your own unique way, then you have hit the jackpot. He basically asked me what I thought each line meant, and I started to meander my way through this as well, trying to sound smart. This time he stopped me. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, as it was so long ago, that basically what Hamlet is trying to say throughout the whole monologue is, should I kill myself or shouldn't I? To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is in our nature to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of trouble and by opposing end them. I won't go on, but you can see it now. Now I know that many of you will disagree and want to look further into the text for more subtext, and that is your right, and you should, but that doesn't work for me. Indeed, that is the brilliance of the great bard. His works appeal to the aristocracy and to the general public simultaneously, time and time again. Anyway, From that time forward, John told me that whenever I read Shakespeare, to read it as if I were a 5-year-old watching a footy match. I think he understood us Antipodeans. All of a sudden, all this highbrow old English made sense for me. It was like a magic spell that opened my eyes and I could see the simplicity behind all of Shakespeare's complexity. From here, John got us all back in the room, and after seeing us all perform and getting to know us all a little better, that the text that would work best for us to study as a group would be King Lear. He ascribed each of us a character to study, and he told me to look at Edmund, the bastard son of Duke Gloucester. A bastard is someone commonly born to a nobleman, but through one of his mistresses, not his actual wife. You can be a bastard regardless of your gender, but you have to be born outside of wedlock in a royal family. To begin with, he wanted me to learn Edmund's first monologue off by heart in 3 days and recite it for him. I did not expect to receive homework as intense as that on my first day. I'd only landed in London 2 days prior and I still had major jet lag, and I thought I would have time to explore the sights of this great city. Instead, I was sitting in a small room somewhere in central London frantically trying to memorise this monologue, which was easy as I had a young brain at the time. It sucks getting old, believe me. There is not much forestory to King Lear that I need to explain to you now. However, in the course of discussing the play, I will have to refer back to some of the characters' histories to explain their motivations that propel them forward. The play opens up on King Lear with most of his court and his 3 daughters in attendance, where he has called an assembly. No one knows why. However, we soon find out that he is going to retire as king then and there. No one knows the reason for this either. Even the audience and scholars of Shakespeare can speculate as to why, as it is rarely been known, if ever, for a sitting monarch to relinquish their crown. Usually a king or queen has to die one way or another in order for this to happen, as we've most recently seen with Queen Elizabeth. The only case I know of in modern history where a living monarch has done so is when Charles I abdicated the throne in England before World War II, as he wanted to marry a commoner, and until recent history that was a big no-no in English society and aristocracy. But he did so, and he moved to Switzerland to live out the rest of his life with his bride, and left his younger brother George to rule over Great Britain, whose daughter Elizabeth II, as I just mentioned, passed away, and his grandson now is king. It is speculated that Lear retires because it is the start of his spiral into madness of dementia later on in the play, which runs over the course of a couple of years. However, at this stage he is still quite lucid, so why would he do it? I believe he does it because he realizes that he is losing his mind and he needs to ensure his bloodline continues to sit in the throne long after he goes mad, so that he is not usurped by someone else outside of his family who would take advantage of his weakness. His eldest 2 daughters, who are both married to the Duke of Albany and the Duke of Cornwall respectively, gladly accept this offer, as they are both ruthless and ambitious in their lust for power. His youngest daughter, Cordelia, who is merciful and gentle in nature and is yet to be married, refuses, not in spite of her father, but because she genuinely cares for him and is concerned for his health, and of course she knows her sister's intentions, that they will both do anything to rule over the entire kingdom, including killing her, as she is the most merciful of the 3 and thus the easiest for them to pick off, before turning on each other. Lear, however, sees this rejection as a betrayal of her loyalty to him, as he can't see past his action beyond this fact, and that she truly turns it down with the greatest of intentions towards him, because she loves and respects him and wants to see him serve out his duty as king until his death. He will have none of her explanations, however, as he is a stubborn and deteriorating old man. He thus promptly retracts her third of the bargain and divides the kingdom into halves for each of the remaining two daughters, disowns Cordelia, and banishes her from the kingdom to France. This sets off a chain of dominoes, the first of which to fall is the Duke of Gloucester, who realizes that he too is getting on in life and is entering his twilight years. And so he too must secure his lineage for his bloodline, so he decides to give all of his wealth and power to his legitimate son Edgar, so that he can gain favour with Lear's daughters and thus retain the dukedom of Gloucester. Edmund, however, his illegitimate bastard, who has returned back from Paris upon Gloucester's request, is livid with this, as he will get nothing and end up destitute. This angers him as he has become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, where he is known in the court of Paris as the ultimate playboy. He has been partying it up over in France, where he has been living the high life off of his father, who continues to stream money which goes to financing his lifestyle. He is not prepared to give up any of this without a fight, and as he is Gloucester's only other son, legitimate or not, he knows that with Edgar out of the way, his father will have to name him the heir apparent. Edgar also knows this and flees, as Edgar, unlike Edmund, is weak and pathetic and has no ambition. However, he does not want to die either, so he goes and disguises himself as a homeless hermit and lives in a cave in the White Cliffs of Dover. Edmund does know, however, that he can't just outright kill his own brother and expect his father to forgive him, so he comes up with a plan to paint Edgar in a bad light. He forges a letter in his brother's handwriting that says that he intends to assassinate his own father, Gloucester, to seize ultimate power, because he does not want his father finding out that he betrayed his brother Edmund by trying to assassinate him, but failing. All of this is a lie, of course, to convince Gloucester that he, Edmund, should kill Edgar, so that it's his father's idea, and he is not granted access to his wealth and power. Meanwhile, Goneril and Regan are now coming up with their own schemes of murder and intrigue. With their sister out of the way in France, the only thing that stands in their way of ultimate power, besides each other, is their father. But why, you may ask? Hasn't he retired? Well, before either of them can have a go at each other, they must make sure he is out of the picture, so that he does not wake up to their ultimate plan and take all the power of England for themselves, one against the other. Because if the scales do fall from his eyes, he will see that Cordelia's decision was honourable after all, and thus he will take all the power away from the victor of this contest and hand it all back to Cordelia. Lear, although he is senile, is still lucid enough to realise his life is in danger and flees London himself for Dover to escape to France. But before he makes it there, he completely loses his mind and gets lost. This is where Edmund stumbles upon him and recognises Lear. Lear, of course, does not recognise him, as Edmund now looks like a bum, and of course Lear is close to losing his mind completely. So he takes him into his cave to protect him. This is where the subplot and the main plot of King Lear becomes intertwined, because Lear and Edmund are now both lost to both parties. Edmund, however, sees this as an advantage, so he makes a deal with both sisters, as he is sleeping with both of them, so as to play both sides against the others, as to ensure that no matter who wins of the two of them, once he has taken care of both assassinations, he will always be looked after as Duke of Gloucester. The actual Duke of Gloucester, however, is no fool and figures out the truth about all that is going on. So he sends a letter to Cordelia, who has now married the King of France, to come back home and sort this mess out. The rest of the play is all just filled out with foul play, double and triple crosses and intrigue before Cordelia shows up with the French army at the end to kill everyone. Lear, however, is on his dying breaths, succumbing to old age, before she finally gets to him. With his final words, He seeks her forgiveness as he recognizes her and realizes the mistake he has made, and gives the whole kingdom to her and then dies. In the next episode, I will explore one of Shakespeare's comedies, just to mix it up a bit and keep these podcasts light-hearted, every so often as they seem to be getting a little dark with all these tragedies. Until then, remember, when we are born, we cry that we come to this great stage of fools. Until then, remember, when we are born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. Yet, for my younger audience, please wake up and don't wait for this quote to come true. Thou shouldest not have been old till thou hadst been wise.